The night was silent except for the sound of shovels biting into wet earth. A cold wind swept through the deserted construction site, carrying the scent of rain and steel. Under the pale wash of the moon, Alexander Kane stood in his tailored suit, his hands trembling despite his carefully controlled expression. At his feet lay the lifeless body of Victor Marquez, his friend, his partner, the man who once dreamed of building an empire. Hello, my dear listeners. Welcome back to another thrilling story. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so now, so you won't miss any of our upcoming tales filled with mystery, betrayal, and secrets that will keep you at the edge of your seat. Now, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What do you think really happened between Alexander Kane and Victor Marquez? Do you believe it was betrayal, revenge, or something far darker? Share your thoughts below, because your comments bring these stories to life. Kane's face was stone, but his eyes betrayed him. Each scoop of dirt that covered Victor's body pressed heavy on his chest, as if he were burying more than a man. He was burying trust, loyalty, and the last piece of his humanity. When the last trace of Victor disappeared beneath the soil, Kane whispered into the darkness, "I'm sorry, old friend, but this empire is mine." Years passed, and the world forgot the name Victor Marquez. But Kane never did. His skyscrapers rose, his wealth multiplied, his face appeared on magazine covers. Yet at night, when the city lights flickered against the glass of his penthouse, Kane would sometimes see Victor's reflection staring back at him. Sophia Price couldn't shake the feeling that Alexander Kane was haunted. The first time she stood in his penthouse office, she noticed it, a man worth billions, yet his eyes darted to the shadows as if someone else stood there with him. The walls of glass reflected power, but beneath the polish, she sensed a secret pulsing like a buried vein. Kane wasn't just a CEO. He was hiding something that could burn his empire to ash if it ever came to light. In the weeks that followed, whispers about Kane filled Sophia's investigations desk at the Tribune. She was a rising journalist, ambitious, unwilling to settle for watered-down stories about corporate mergers. And Kane was different. He appeared flawless, untouchable, but every flawless surface hit a crack. Sophia became obsessed with finding his. The trail began with a name no one spoke anymore, Victor Marquez. Buried in old financial records, she found signatures that hinted at a forgotten partnership, documents filed in secrecy, erased from the public eye. When she confronted Kane during a press event, his mask cracked for the briefest second. His jaw tightened, his hand trembled on the podium. She had touched the ghost. Sophia pressed harder. She traced Victor's trail across continents, patent filings, company blueprints, emails that had slipped through digital cracks. And then she found Elena, Victor's daughter, living quietly in Spain, far from the noise of the business world. Elena had been hiding, but Sophia's persistence brought her into the light. "My father trusted Alexander," Elena confessed, her eyes filled with years of pain. "They built the foundation of Kane Global together. But then my father disappeared. No body, no funeral. Just gone." And Kane stepped into the light as if Victor never existed. It was a confirmation Sophia needed, but it also painted a target on her back. The closer she got to Victor's disappearance, the more dangerous the game became. Her car was followed at night. Her apartment was broken into, files stolen, her laptop smashed. Yet she refused to stop, because beneath the scandal of betrayal lay something even darker. Kane hadn't just stolen a company. He had erased a man. Alexander Kane, meanwhile, felt the walls closing in. At 60, he was still the untouchable titan of industry, but his nights were restless. He would sit in his penthouse, whiskey in hand, staring at the skyline he built, whispering into the silence, "Victor, why won't you stay buried?" The pressure mounted when Daniel Reed, a former Kane Global attorney, defected. He reached out to Sophia with a flash drive. "This isn't just about money," Daniel said. "It's about murder. Read the files, and you'll see." Inside were contracts, letters, and confidential memos proving that Victor had been a true innovator, the mind behind patents that made Kane Global a giant. And then, abruptly, chillingly, all communication stopped the year Victor vanished. Sophia's hand shook as she pieced it together. Kane had built his empire on a corpse. But going public meant war. Kane unleashed his lawyers, his media allies, his private investigators. Sophia was branded a fraud. Elena was called a liar. Daniel's career was threatened. Kane stood before flashing cameras, polished as ever, claiming, "These accusations are baseless." Kane Global was built on vision, not lies. Yet behind his eyes, the world saw it. Faye. The city had always adored Alexander Kane. He was a philanthropist who funded hospitals, the tycoon who built skyscrapers that kissed the clouds, the charming man whose face belonged on every business magazine. But adoration had a fragile core, and Sophia was striking it with every article she published. Her first expose sent ripples, not waves. It raised questions but stopped short of an outright accusation. She needed the public to lean in, not turn away. But each word she wrote pressed harder against Kane's carefully constructed mask. He could feel the weight of her typewriter keys hammering against his chest. At a charity gala, their paths crossed again. Sophia arrived in a modest black dress, notebook hidden in her clutch. Kane, draped in power and tailored fabric, noticed her before she noticed him. For a moment, the room of chandeliers and violins seemed to fade. "You're relentless," Kane said, cornering her near the champagne table. His voice was low, dangerous, yet tinged with something almost like admiration. Sophia met his gaze without flinching. "The truth is relentless. I just follow it." "Careful," Kane murmured. "Truth has teeth, and you're not ready for the bite." But Sophia was ready. Every warning only sharpened her hunger. That night, she caught a glimpse of Kane stepping onto the balcony, his eyes lifted toward the sky. For the briefest second, his expression cracked, grief, guilt, loneliness flickering across his face. And in that weakness, she saw not just a villain but a man haunted. Still, haunted men could destroy you. Daniel Reed urged caution. Kane isn't someone you expose and walk away from. He will fight, and he doesn't fight fair. But Sophia pressed forward, and the deeper she dug, the more corruption spilled out. Bribes to politicians, laundered funds, offshore accounts hidden under names that weren't his. And then she found it, a payment trail leading to the very night Victor disappeared. It wasn't just corporate betrayal anymore. It was blood money. Elena wept when Sophia showed her the records. My father didn't just vanish. He was silenced. And Kane made sure I lived in the shadows, terrified, for decades. Meanwhile, Kane's empire began to splinter. Stockholders whispered. Journalists picked up Sophia's scent. The once untouchable titan found himself shadowed by questions in every interview. And yet, he fought back with the ferocity of a man cornered. One evening, Sophia received a plain envelope at her apartment door. No name, no return address. Inside, a single photograph. Kane, standing at a half-dug grave, his suit smeared with date, moonlight carving shadows across his face. At his feet, the unmistakable outline of a man's body. Sophia's heart thundered. Proof. Not just whispers, not just documents. Proof. But it also meant one terrifying truth. Someone had been at the night Kane buried Victor, and that someone wanted the world to know. She brought the photo to Daniel. His face drained of color. This could ruin him, but it could also ruin you. If he finds out you have it. Sophia didn't care. For weeks, she lived with the photo hidden beneath her mattress, its edges worn from her trembling hands pulling it out night after night. She wasn't just chasing a story anymore. She was holding the key to an empire's destruction, and Kane knew it. The pressure mounted until the inevitable collision. One night, Sophia found herself summoned, no choice, no negotiation, to Kane's penthouse. The city lights glittered below, and Kane stood with a glass of scotch, his reflection fractured in the window. You think you've won, he said softly, not turning to face her. But you don't understand what you've stepped into. Victor wasn't innocent. He had secrets of his own, dangerous ones. Sophia frowned. Are you trying to rewrite history now? Kane finally turned, his eyes burning. I buried a man, yes, but if I hadn't, the people who came for him that night would have buried me too. Do you understand? This isn't about greed. It was survival. For the first time, Sophia hesitated. Could there be truth in his confession? Could Victor have been more than just a victim? But hesitation was dangerous. The world didn't care for half-truths. The world cared for scandal. And the deeper she fell into Kane's orbit, the more she questioned whether she was chasing justice or simply feeding a hunger that would consume them both. Sophia couldn't sleep anymore. Each night, the photo of Kane burying Victor pulsed like a living thing beneath her pillow. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the dirt falling, Kane's expression carved with guilt and cold determination. And now his words echoed too. It was survival. But survival at what cost? Elena begged her to release the story. The world has to know what he did. Don't let him twist it. Don't let him bury my father twice. Sophia promised, but her chest tightened with doubt. If Kane was telling the truth, if Victor had been involved with dangerous people, then publishing could unleash something bigger than a corporate scandal. It could light a fire that consumed them all. Meanwhile, Kane's life became a fortress of paranoia. His security doubled. His movements were shadowed. Every night he stared into the skyline, haunted not just by Victor's ghost but by Sophia herself. For the first time in his empire-building life, Alexander Kane was afraid. The board of directors sensed weakness. Stockholders whispered of betrayal. Competitors circled like sharks. The more Kane fought to hold his empire together, the faster it unraveled. But he couldn't let go, not after decades of clawing his way to the top, not after burying Victor, not after everything he had sacrificed. Sophia, however, was unraveling too. One night she came home to find her apartment ransacked. Her notes shredded, the photograph gone. Her body froze. Only one man had reason to steal it, but Kane wasn't sloppy. If he wanted her silenced, she'd be dead, which meant someone else was in the shadows, watching both of them. She met Daniel in a quiet cafe, panic flickering in her voice. The photo's gone. Someone else has it. Daniel leaned forward. Then you need to understand, Kane isn't your only enemy. If Victor had ties to people he shouldn't have, and if Kane cut a deal that night to save himself, then whoever was in the dock with him is still out there. The realization sank deep. The ghost haunting Kane wasn't just guilt. It was survival. Someone else had dote on him, and they were waiting for the right moment to strike. The cracks widened when Elena returned to the city. No longer hiding, no longer afraid. She demanded to confront Kane face to face. Against a better judgment, Sophia agreed to broker the meeting. The night they stood in Kane's penthouse together, time seemed to fracture. Elena's voice shook, but her words cut like knives. You killed him. You buried my father to take what wasn't yours. Kane's shoulders sagged, his face hollow. I didn't kill him. He was already dying the moment he crossed them. I only finished what they started. It was either him or me. Elena slapped him, tears streaming down her face. You had a choice. You chose your empire. Sophia watched silently, her recorder tucked inside her coat pocket. This was more than testimony. This was confession. But that night, as she transcribed Kane's broken words, a chill swept through her apartment. A message had slipped under her door, a single sheet of paper. 3 words, scrawled in black ink. You're next, Sophia. The realization hit her harder than fear itself. Someone else wanted this story buried. Someone who wasn't Alexander Kane. And suddenly, the lines between truth and survival blurred. Kane wasn't just a monster of her investigation. He was also a man standing on the same ledge he was. One wrong move, and they both fall. The city turned against Alexander Kane. Headlines screamed accusations. Fraud, murder, conspiracy. His empire bled stock value with every passing day. Old allies deserted him, and whispers of government investigations grew louder. But Kane fought tooth and nail, standing before cameras with polished speeches and forced confidence. Inside, though, he was breaking. Sophia watched him carefully, caught between hatred and fascination. Here was a man who had buried his partner, stolen his empire, and yet when she looked into his eyes now, she saw something deeper, a man at war with his past, his ghost clawing at him from the grave. The threats against her escalated. Anonymous calls in the night. Shadows outside a building. One morning she found her car door slashed open, a knife stabbed into the driver's seat with a note. Stop. She confronted Kane. This isn't just you anymore. Who else is pulling the strings? Kane's silence was answer enough. Someone powerful still lingered from the night Victor died. Someone who wanted Sophia's silence because a digging threatened more than Kane's empire. Elena grew reckless. She began appearing at Kane's public events, shouting accusations. Crowds gathered, cameras flashed, and soon her voice became impossible to ignore. The narrative shifted. The world no longer saw Alexander Kane as untouchable. They saw him as a murderer cloaked in money. And then, the breaking point. A leaked video surfaced online. Grainy, shaky footage of Kane at the construction site years ago. The outline of Victor's body. The dirt. Kane's face caught in the moonlight, twisted with guilt. The video went viral within hours. Kane Global collapsed. Sponsors pulled out. Politicians who once praised him now condemned him. His mansion became a fortress of reporters, cameras flashing through the night as protesters gathered at his gates. Sophia should have felt triumph. She had chased the truth and caught it. But instead, her knees curdled in her stomach. Who leaked the video? Who had been there with a camera the night Victor was buried? The answer came swiftly. Daniel Reed vanished. His apartment stripped bare. His phone disconnected. The last email he sent to Sophia read only, "I'm sorry. They found me." Sophia's blood ran cold. She realized too late that Daniel had been the one holding the camera that night. He had been there, watching Kane bury Victor. And now, whoever they were, they had taken him. Kane summoned Sophia in desperation. His empire in flames, his fortune bleeding away. He stood in his penthouse surrounded by half-packed boxes. "They are coming for both of us," he said hoarsely. "You think I'm the villain, but the real danger hasn't even shown its face yet." Sophia clenched her fists. "Then tell me who they are." Kane's eyes darkened. "If I speak their name, neither of us will live to see tomorrow." For the first time, Sophia saw him not as a giant she'd chased, but as a man cornered, terrified, and utterly alone. The city demanded his head. The courts demanded answers. And in the chaos, the shadowy hands that once orchestrated Victor's downfall stirred again, ready to bury every loose end, including Kane, Sophia, and Elena. The courtroom was a battlefield. Cameras lined the walls. Journalists filled every seat. And Alexander Kane sat at the center of it all, no longer the untouchable CEO, but a man on trial for murder. His suit still fit, his words still carried weight, but the empire behind him was ashes. Sophia sat in the gallery, recorder tucked in her bag, her pulse racing. She should have felt victorious, but something gnawed at her, the shadows Kane refused to name. Elena took the stand first. Her voice cracked, but her words were sharp. "My father trusted him. He believed Alexander Kane was his partner, his brother. Instead, Kane stole everything and left me fatherless." Gasps filled the room. Kane didn't flinch. He only stared at the table, his jaw set like stone. Then Sophia was cold. She recounted her investigation, the documents, the photographs, the threats. Every eye in the room bore down on her, but she stood tall. She had followed the truth this far. She would not falter now. Finally, it was Kane's turn. He rose slowly, like a man walking to the gallows. His voice, though quiet, carried through the chamber. "Yes, I buried Victor Marquez," he admitted. "But I did not kill him. Victor was already marked. He had made enemies powerful enough to crush us both. That night, they came for him. I struck a deal to survive. And in return, I had to erase him. His name, his legacy, his body." The courtroom erupted in chaos. Names, the prosecutor demanded. Who were these enemies? Kane's eyes flicked to Sophia, then to Elena. For a heartbeat, guilt and fear warred across his face. But he said nothing, only silence. The trial ended with no clear answer. Kane was convicted of fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, but on the charge of murder, doubt lingered. The jury could not decide if he had killed Victor or only buried him. Still, the empire was gone. The billionaire titan was led away in handcuffs, his reflection fractured in the glass doors of the courthouse. The world watched as Alexander Kane, the man who once seemed larger than life, was reduced to a prisoner. Sophia stood outside in the cold air, reporters swarming around her. For weeks she was praised, her articles splashed across headlines. She had brought down a giant, but victory tasted hollow, because Daniel was still missing, because the people Kane feared still lingered in the shadows, because some truths were too dangerous to print. One night, months later, Sophia walked past the ruins of a Kane global skyscraper project, abandoned, skeletal, half eaten by rust. She paused, staring at the broken steel against the night sky. For a moment, she thought she saw a figure standing there, watching her. A shadow. Then it was gone. Elena tried to rebuild her life, but grief clung to her like a shroud. She left the city quietly, disappearing into the world just as her father once had. And Kane sat in a cell, the walls closing in on him. Each night he whispered into darkness the same words he had spoken years ago as he buried Victor. "I'm sorry, old friend, but this empire was mine." Only now, there was no empire left. Only a man haunted by ghosts, his legacy nothing but ashes and silence. The city moved on. The skyscrapers glittered, the markets churned, new names filled the headlines. But somewhere, in the spaces between power and ruin, the shadow of Alexander Kane lingered, a reminder that behind every empire, there's a secret. And sometimes, the secret is the empire itself. And that, my dear listeners, is a haunting story of Alexander Kane, a man who built an empire on secrets, only to watch it crumble into dust. What do you think? Was Kane a victim of forces greater than himself, or the architect of his own downfall? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next tale of power, betrayal, and truth hidden in the shadows. Until then, thank you for listening, and stay safe, my friends.